Good morning, church. How's it going? Yeah, I need y'all to talk back to me all day today. I've been 3 days with middle schoolers, so they talk even when I don't want them to. Come on, somebody. So I need y'all to talk back to me. Don't worry, I promise next week, Pastor Joey's big, beautiful, bald head will be back up here. But today, you got me. Real quick, before I start, I just want to say, can we give it up for Brian last week, Pastor Brian last week? Yeah. Well, I do have to tell you, now that you all clapped for him, that he is a Kansas City Chiefs fan. So you can take your clap back if you want to. We did an amazing job. Well, there's two things you got to know about me. Here's the first one. I'm fairly confident that if you don't have an iPhone, you can't get into heaven. I joked about that all the time, and it's really bad that I said this because my mom's sitting in this service and she does not have an iPhone. So it's really bad that I said this today, but I used to joke about it, be like, man, if you don't have an iPhone, like, what's wrong with you? And then I realized yesterday, we were at our middle school camp, and this kid comes up to me, and he has an Android phone. He goes, is this your phone? And, like, I was kind of offended. I'm like, you think I have green text? Like, what is up with this? And I was kind of offended. I realized, okay, maybe I need to be a little nicer to you Android people. But here's the second thing you got to know about me. I'm 23, and I'm married to my beautiful wife, Kayla. I think we got a picture of us. Yeah. Can we give it up for Kayla real quick? Yeah. That's our little boy, Walter, in the picture, our little golden retriever. He's a puppy, so he's adorably cute, but extremely naughty. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Yep. But that's a whole other conversation. And as Pastor Joey said, today I'm talking about identity. Everybody say identity. Turn to your neighbor and say identity. Now, I know some of you're probably a little nervous to talk to your neighbor because it's your spouse and you woke up late to come to church and they're mad at you. Just me? Okay, that's just me. It's fine. But all day today, I'm going to have you turning to your neighbor and saying something. So let's try it again. Say identity to your neighbor. Identity. So I'm going to take some of y'all back a little bit. And that is to your middle school days. Can you do that real quick for me? No, some of y'all shaking your head no, like absolutely not. So I'll never forget this. I was 13 years old, and I was a 13-year-old boy. Anybody got any middle school boys in here? Or had any boys that are in high school that passed middle school? Or y'all know what I'm about to say then. I thought every single girl in the entire world was cute. Right? And so I'm in middle school, 13 years old, and I'm at school, and this girl walks in. It's her first day, she was new, and so naturally, as I think every single girl is cute, I thought, she was a cute 13-year-old boy, right? So I'm talking to her, I'm making her laugh, blah, 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 and then I had a friend that knew her from before she came to school, so I said, hey, do me a favor, go talk to her and see what she thinks about me, you know what I mean? And so she comes back and she's like, I saw her talking, I saw her point at me, and I'm like, oh man, this is going amazing, you know what I mean? She comes back and she's like, she actually wants to talk to you after school. I'm like, okay, So I'm telling everybody, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, can you believe this? You know what I mean? So everybody's watching. It gets to the end of the school, and I'm there, and I'm go up to her, and I'm like, hey, so she said you wanted to talk to me, and she's like looking at me confused, and I'm like, did I miss something? Like what happened here? You know what I mean? And she goes, well, I wasn't talking about you. Your name's Zach, right? So that was my best friend that was standing behind me when they pointed up here. And I remember this is the response I said. Here's what I said. I said, that's not my name. If you're a note taker, that's the title of my message to say, that's not my name. Turn to your neighbor and say, that's not my name. So our motto here is, we're real people who have real hope in this real world. So can I be real quick when I start off today? Can I be a little real with you guys? Oh, man, you're going to have to do a little better than that. Can I be a little real with y'all today? Okay. I know it's 9:30 in the morning, but can we do that? Can we be a little real today? So as I began thinking about this question, Pastor Joey asked me, he said, if there's one message you could preach to the church, outside of, Jesus coming and dying for them, what would it be? And I'll be honest with you, I wrestled with it, back and forth. And about a week and a half ago, I really felt the Lord speak to me. He says, what do you always tell the students? And so I always tell the students this thing. I say, if I can tell you two things, the first one is this: Jesus came and died for you. Yeah, there's grace over any mistake that you can make, but there's a second one. And it's that your identity matters. What you put your identity in is important. And so as I began wrestling with this, I felt the Lord say about a week and a half ago, what do you tell the students? So I want to talk to you today that your identity is important. Everybody say your identity is important. You see, as I began looking at this world, it doesn't take more than 5 seconds. You go on Instagram, you turn on the news, you do whatever. You can realize we have a pretty messed up world. Walk through the schools for 5 seconds. I promise you, you'll see it's a pretty messed up world. You said I could be real, so I'm going to be real with you. We have an issue of people mercilessly killing each other in our country. We have a racial issue. We have political issues. We have an issue of gender identity, gender sexuality. And what I want to talk to you today about is that, yes, I'm including all those things, and all those things are real and they're important, but they all have a root issue, that we don't know our identity. Because I'm confident in this. If the church, the Big C church, can get a hold of their identity in Jesus, then those things can change. Come on, somebody. Come on, somebody. And I want to tell you this. From the very beginning, the devil has had one plan, and it's to change what God has already said. We see it in the garden from the very beginning. God creates humans. He looks at them and says, don't eat of the tree of knowledge and good and evil. What's the first thing we see the devil do? He comes into the scene, he looks at them and says, but did God really say that? And I'm confident in this, that every single one of us have some aspect of our identity that Jesus hasn't fully taken over. We believe some lie, we've been told something has happened to us, and there's an aspect of our identity that Jesus hasn't fully taken over. And I'm confident in this, that if Jesus can fully take over our identity, our lives can change. So I want to pick up and tell you this. Your identity should be important to you because it's important to God. We see this multiple times throughout the Bible. God literally changes the identity, changes the name of people in the Bible. I want to give you two real quick. The first one is this, Simon. Anybody know what God changed his name to? Peter. Come on, some of y'all are smart today, right? He changed his name to Peter. Here's what Peter means. It means the rock. He looked at him and said, on this rock I will build my church. Changed his name to Peter. And I want to tell you about a second one. His name is Abram. Anybody know what Abram's name was changed to? Abraham. Now I want to pause right here. And I know the moment that Pastor Joey said identity, and the moment I said identity, excuses started coming into your head. Some of y'all said, I play pickleball and I ride a golf cart. Does it really matter if I get a hold of my identity now? Come on, somebody. I just want to say I actually love pickleball. I just had to say that. Just had to say, get it out there. But you find in Genesis chapter 17, verse 1, I don't have it up. You can go look for yourself. But Abraham was 99 years old. 99. When God changed his name from Abram to Abraham, and it means the father of many nations. 99 years old. So I want to tell you this today. I don't know what excuse came into your head, because I'll be honest with you, when I started writing this message, excuses came into my head. Does it really matter? I don't know what excuse you have, but I want to tell you this. Your identity, regardless of your age, regardless of whatever is stopping you from reaching that, I want to tell you that your identity is important. And your life can change right now, today, if you can get a hold of it. So we see from the very beginning, God gave us an identity. Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. It says, so God created mankind in his own, everybody say, image. Turn to your neighbor and say, image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. You see, what I need you to understand is that while this word in English literally is image, it's actually something much deeper than this. It's called imago Dei. Turn to your neighbor and say, imago Dei. Somebody else said I could barely say it in English. I don't know how you want me to say it there, right? Imago Dei, and here's what it means. It means you have an inherent worth and a value and an identity placed on you, not because of anything you are, but because of who created you. Oh man, y'all missed it. You have an inherent value and worth, not because of anything you do, but because of who created you. The same way a one-of-a-kind Picasso, a one-of-a-kind Van Gogh is priceless. I'll be honest with you, I look at some of those paintings, I'm like, these are the ugliest things I've seen in the entire world. But they're priceless. Why? Because of who created them. And so what I want to tell you today is this. Your identity is important, and you have one, whether you believe it or not, because the Creator has given you something so special, so unique, because He's valuable. And because of you were created by Him, you're valuable too. So I want to talk to you today about this. Only the person who gave you life can give you your identity. You see, I'll never forget, I was about 14, 15 years old, and my mom's in here, so I'll try not to embarrass her, but I was 14, 15 years old, and all my life growing up, my mom would never call my friends by their name. Here's what I mean. I had a friend named Zach. She would always call him Zachary by his full name. A friend named Josh, she would always call him Joshua. Jake, always call him Jake. I'm like, Mom, you're embarrassing me. What are you doing, And one day I asked her, and I'll never forget this. She turned around, she looked me in my eyes, And she said, I refuse to call them by a shorter name because their mom and dad, the person that gave them life, gave them their identity. Come on, somebody. That's some wisdom right there. Yeah. And so when I began thinking about this, I started picturing a $20 bill. I believe we have a picture of one. We can put it up on the screen for y'all to see so it's a little closer because some of y'all need glasses. I do too. I'm just kidding with you. And it says the United States of America on it. Y'all see it up there? Let me try it again. Y'all see it up there? Yeah, there we go. Okay. You see, the thing about this $20 bill is that the person who created it determined its identity, its value, the United States of America. The U.S. government determines this bill's value. So if I were to ask you, how much is this bill worth, what would you say? There you go. If I were to fold it in half and ask you, how much is this bill worth, what would you say? If I were to crumple it up, how much would you say this bill is worth? If I were to throw it on the ground, what would you say it's worth? If I were to stomp on it, what would you say it's worth? You see, here's the problem is that the value of this bill did not change because of what's happened to it, but many times we change our own value and our own identity because of what's happened to us. Come on, somebody. And I came to tell somebody today that the same way that the value of this bill does not change because its creator determined its identity, your value and your identity does not change because of what's happened to you, what you believe about yourself, what somebody else has said about you. Your value and your identity does not change because the creator has already given it to you. Come on, somebody. Yeah. So I want to pick up in this story. We're going to the Old Testament. I bet y'all didn't know the youth pastor was going to bust out the Old Testament on y'all. We're about to go in the Old Testament to a man named Gideon. And I want to see what happens. I want to show you what happens when somebody catches a hold of their identity. The verse we're looking at is Judges chapter 6, verse 11 and 12. Before I read it to you, I want to tell you a little bit of backstory. During this time, the Israelites had fallen, they had sinned, and they had fallen to the hands of the Midianites. Everybody say the Midianites. Now, the Midianites were cruel to them. They would come and kill them. They would steal anything that they grew or made, and they would leave them to starve and to die. So this is where we pick up, and it says, Judges chapter 6, verse 11, it says, the angel of the Lord came and sat down. Everybody say sat down. Under the oak and Ophrah, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior. Everybody bow your head. Let me pray real quick. Father, I thank you for you are. God, I thank you that you've given us an identity. That doesn't matter about our age. It doesn't matter what's happened to us. It doesn't matter what we believe about ourselves. It doesn't matter what somebody else has said. You've given us an identity. God, I pray you take the stage and you speak. In your son's name I pray, amen. So before we jump into identity, I wanted to pause right here and talk to somebody about this. I felt it very clear when I was writing this message. The Lord said that somebody was going to walk in here and they needed to hear this. Here's what I realized studying this verse. Never caught it before when I read this. It says, the angel of the Lord came in, sat down. Everybody say sat down. So that's verse 11. In verse 12, then it says, then the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, which means this. The angel of the Lord came and was sitting with Gideon in his situation, and he didn't even realize it. And I believe some of you walked in here and you've been walking through something difficult, you've been walking through something painful, and I'm here to tell you, just because you can't see God in the situation doesn't mean he's not there. He's sitting down under that tree with you, and he's there with you in this situation. So I want to tell you this, whatever you walked in here with today, God is with you in your situation. And here's the thing about it. Gideon is trying not to be found. And I believe some of us walked in here today, we've been trying not to be found. We've been hiding behind an identity. I can tell you God is sitting with you in it, and he's waiting, and just because you can't see him doesn't mean he's not there. See, the thing about it is that I've never threshed wheat before. Has anybody in here threshed wheat before? Yeah, I didn't think so, right? And so as I began studying this, what they would do is it was out in a field, and they would cut off a section of the wheat. And the reason why they do that is it would help it grow better, and then the wind would take it away. You see, if they cut it and let it fall on the ground, many of the plants would die because it would cover the soil where they were. So they did it outside. So when it answers this question and it says, Gideon was threshing wheat in a wine press, that's significant. See, I don't know how much you drink wine. Real people, right? Real people, right? I don't know how much you drink wine, but a wine press is not outdoors. And many times in Gideon's day, it was inside the base of a mountain, inside a cave. It was cool, it was dark, and we find Gideon threshing wheat here. Why? He was afraid of what would happen to him if the Midianites found him. So he's hiding, alone, afraid, inside a cave, threshing wheat. And here's what I wrote. I want you guys to catch this. It's so good. It says, when others looked at Gideon, they saw a fearful man trembling in the winepress. But God looked at Gideon and saw a mighty warrior. Everybody say warrior. You see, this is Judges chapter 6 I read to you, but I'm going to speed through Judges chapter 7. You can go look at it for yourself. The craziest story happens. Gideon gets up from this winepress. He leaves immediately. He goes and rounds 22,000 men. None of them have been trained to fight. Runs up 22,000 men, and he brings them before God, and he says, all right, God, I have an army. Now, you might be thinking, that's pretty cool. But the Midianites had an army of 135,000 trained men. And it gets crazier here. God looks at him and says, nope, that's too many. And Gideon's like, okay. He goes, I'll give you a test. And however many men come back, we'll try it again. He comes back, 10,000 men come back. And Gideon says, okay, I'm ready. And God says, nope, that's still too many. Okay. So he goes, I'll give you another test. So he comes back with 300 men. Everybody say 300. They were outnumbered 450 to 1. Yes, I used a calculator to do that. I promise you. 450 to 1. They had no weapons. They had no armor. They had trumpets and torches. And God says, you ready? And Gideon takes 300 men and goes and defeats an entire army. And can I tell you this? Changing your identity can change the trajectory of your life. You see, Gideon went from hiding in a cave, alone, to leading an army to defeat the biggest army of the day. And can I tell you, his life changed. The moment he understood that his identity was that he was a warrior, he got up and moved. And can I tell you, some of you walked in here and you've been looking for a change in your life. And I believe that change comes when you grab a hold of your identity. You see, your identity determines what you do with the rest of your life. You want to be a family member, you want to be a worker, you want to be a friend, you want to be this, you want to be that. Your identity determines it. You see, if you believe that no one likes you, then you're going to act like no one likes you. You see, Gideon was acting like what he believed about himself. And that's why he was hiding in a wine press. You see, he believed that there was nothing that he could do to change his circumstance. So what is he doing? Hiding alone in a cave. And I came to tell you this, your identity determines your actions. And so if us as a church want to see some change in this world, we're going to have to get a hold of our identity. But I came to tell you this, not only did it change Gideon's life, but the entire nation was changed when one man got a hold of his identity. You see, the entire nation of Israel was in bondage, enslaved, and afraid. And Gideon got up, defeated the army, and changed not only his life, but the life of everybody around him. And I came to tell somebody this. If you grab a hold of your identity, not only will your life change, your family's life will change, the church's life will change, the South Shore regions will change, the schools will change, Tampa will change, and the nation will change. But the first step was Gideon had to get his identity. Come on, somebody, get excited for me. I was literally praying last night, and I added this section. The Lord spoke it to me. I don't know who it's for, but someone's been walking through. I don't know if it's right now. You've been walking through a difficult situation, a season. You felt like it's been one thing after another. Maybe it's been your whole life. You felt like it's been one thing after another. You've been like, I don't understand. I don't understand. And many times we picture this as, well, God must not be with us. And I want to tell you this. The reason the devil wants to change your identity is because he believes every word the Bible says about you. And so the devil is going to attack your identity in any way he can. Because if you get a hold of what God says about you, he knows that things are going to change. You're such a threat to him when you grab a hold of your identity that he's going to find any way to do it. And so everything that the Bible says about you, he's going to say, but did God really say that? What about that person that said this? What about the fact that you walked through this situation? What about the friend that did this? What about the person that stabbed you in the back? What about this? What about this? And he's going to get you to believe a lie about yourself because he's so afraid that if you grab a hold of your identity, that not only will your life change, your family's life will change, and this region's life will change. Come on, somebody. So I want to leave you with 2 simple action steps. 2 simple ones. The first one's this. Find your identity. Turn to your neighbor and say, find your identity. We have a list of some I threw up here, and can I tell you, we would be here all day. You would miss your Cracker Barrel, you would miss everything if I went through the Bible and told you every verse that God has written about you. But I'm going to throw some up here on the screen so you can see them. So you can take a picture of it, you can just get you started. But I want to tell somebody this. This book right here, this Bible, is full of your identity. God's written about you over and over and over again. And can I tell you this? All you got to do is grab your phone and Google, what does God say about me? And it'll come up. If you have an Android, find somebody with an iPhone and let them go. Come on, somebody. Come on, somebody. Right? So here's what I want you to do. Find your identity. You see, all of us struggle with something different. We struggle believing a lie. We believe something about ourselves because of all of our situations are different. We've been told different things. We believe different things have happened to us. And can I tell you that if you find your identity in here, nothing's going to stop you. And the second thing I want you to do, once you grab a hold of your identity, you can look at the devil and you can say, that's not my name. Turn to your neighbor and say, that's not my name. And when those moments come, those seconds come, that difficulty sets in, that you start believing something about yourself, that you start reverting back into that cave the same way Gideon was. You can look at the devil in the face and say, that's not my name. I've been given an identity that you can't change. You're not my creator. You don't determine my identity. In the same way that my mom refused to call anybody by a shorter name, you can say, I refuse to lower my value for you. I refuse to lower my identity for you because that's not my name. I've been given an imago Dei by the Creator. I've been given an identity that nothing can change. Can I tell you this? Gideon went and rounded up 22,000 men. And God said, that's too many. He got 10,000 men. And God said, that's too many. Gideon took 300 men. And can I tell you this? When you grab a hold of your identity, it doesn't matter about your skill. It doesn't matter about your ability. It matters about God. You see, God understood that they had 300 men and trumpets and torches, and He defeated an entire nation. And I believe you guys can do the same. That these generational curses, that these things that you believe about yourself, that the identity that the devil has been speaking into you can be broken today if you grab a hold of your identity. And then when those moments come, when the devil tries to lie to you and say, but did God really say that? You can say, you better believe He did. That's not my name. That's not my name. Turn to your neighbor and say, that's not my name. So I remind you of the 2 action steps. Turn to your neighbor and say, find your identity. And turn to your neighbor and say, that's not my name. You see, I'm tired of the difficulty that we see in our world. I'm tired of seeing racial and political issues. I'm tired of walking into schools and seeing kids afraid that somebody's going to come in there and harm them. I'm tired of it. Seriously, I'm tired of it. And I believe it's the church's responsibility to grab a hold of our identity so the world can get a hold of theirs. So my question for you today is this. Are you going to change your life? And are you going to change the life of those around you? Because I believe that if Wellspring Community Church grabs a hold of their identity, nothing is going to stop the South Shore region from changing. You see, the word authority literally means the ability to make something change. And we sang, you reign above it all. God has the ultimate authority. And can I tell you, when you grab a hold of your identity, God's with you. That's why He said, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior. And the moment that God is on your side, it doesn't matter how big the army is. It doesn't matter how big the difficulty is. It doesn't matter how big that is, because our God is bigger. And I came to tell somebody, I put on my lightning sweatshirt, brought my Bible to church, come on somebody, to tell you this. Your identity is important. And if we as a church can grab our identity, nothing will stop this world from changing. Nothing will stop your life from changing. We have to learn what our identity is. We have to look at the devil in the face and say, that's not my name. God's already determined it. Let me pray for us. Father, I thank you for you are. God, I thank you that you have the ultimate authority. I would be naive to think every single person in here has taken the first step. You would say, I didn't even know that I was loved by God. I didn't even know that God sent his son to die for me. If that's you, I just want you to raise your hand real quick. I just want to pray for you. It's just me looking, I promise you. I'm not going to ask you to come up. I'm not asking you to do anything weird. If that's you, I just want you to raise your hand real quick so I can pray for you. Come on. Just pray this prayer in your spirit. Just say, Lord, thank you for the identity you created in me. God, I thank you for sending your son to die for me. God, I'll make you Lord of my life. But I believe there's a second group of people in here. And maybe this is your first time in a church for a while. Maybe you've been coming to church every week. Maybe you've had a million excuses now to grab a hold of your identity. If that's you, I just want to pray for you. Just raise your hand real quick. Yeah, there's a lot of you. Yeah. I just want to pray with you. God, I pray for the people in this room. I pray for Wellspring Community Church. That we, as the church, can grab a hold of our identity. That when the devil comes to us and say, but did God really say that? We have the authority to say, that's not my name. That you place an identity so strong inside of us that nothing can stop it from happening. God, I thank you for the story of Gideon. God, I thank you that I believe lives are going to change as a result of you speaking today. God, I believe families are going to change when people get a hold of their identity. That our nation is going to change when the church gets a hold of their identity. So God, I pray for the people in this room that their identity becomes so strong in them that nothing can change it. We love you. We thank you for you are. In your son's name I pray, amen. I want to tell you, now is our time for response. I believe some of you have had an identity change that's going to start right now. And so we have 4 ways that you can respond. One is if there's something that's been weighing on you, maybe it's a difficulty, maybe it's in an identity that you've lived your whole life. We have these crosses up here. You can stick a sticky note on there. We also have, if you know somebody in your life right now that you're like, I think they need to hear about Jesus. There's candles up here. I want you to come light a candle for them. And here's what it's saying. It's saying, I commit to praying for them for at least the next week. Can we do that? The third way, we have communion. Everybody say communion. Right up here by our candles. And then the fourth way is this. We're going to have prayer partners come up to the front. And if you decide to make a decision or you decide that you need prayer, our prayer team's going to be up here for you. So let me pray for us one time as we head into a time of response. Father, I thank you for you are. God, I bless your name. You reign above it all. God, I believe that there's somebody in here that needs to take a step of obedience right now. God, I pray you give them the courage. That in the moment of this response time, you move in a way they've never seen before. We love you. We thank you for you are. In your son's name I pray. Amen.